Hello, hello. Yay. All right. It is Friday, August 16th. So here we are for the next weekly Witchcast. I'm excited because today we are getting into lots of good stuff. We're going to get into magic. So for the past couple, we've kind of gone over some intro principles when it comes to money magic. And today we're finally going to really jump into stuff about casting spells. So, for those of you who may be coming across this for the first time, I'm Jessie De Silva. I'm known online as the Millennial Money Witch. That was a name given to me by Forbes for my unique brand of coaching on all things money manifestation. And yeah, that's what I'm known for. I'm the author of the book, The Witch's Way to Wealth, the Every Witch's Guide to Making More Money Faster and Easier Than Ever. And I'm using these weekly witchcasts to go over different topics for people who are getting into money manifestation and they're looking for like half of those magical money mindset shifts and other half practical applicable strategies. Now, I'm big on both magic and science. I'm one of those witches who says science is magic is science and science is magic. And today we're going to focus a little bit more on magic. So if that's not your cup of tea, stay tuned because we're going to have some cool things on science coming up in the next couple weeks. But until then, that's what we're focusing on today. So today we're going to go over like the foundational stuff when it comes to magic. Now, magic is probably, like, not necessarily what you think of. Like, the way I define magic, what I consider magic, might sound pretty mundane, but that's the beauty of magic is that it gets to be whatever you want. Casting spells they can be really simple, they can be really complex. The main things you need to know are some of these foundational principles because you could have the best ritual in the world, but if you're not really paying attention to some of these building blocks, there's a really good chance it can fall flat. Now, there are like four components to these foundations. The first one is going to be the focus on the moon phases. The next one's going to be the zodiac, the time of year that you're casting a spell. And third is going to be the foundational building blocks that I talk about, my three-step method that I use to teach everything that I do. It comes from magic. That's what it comes from, is like what I realized was were the underlying steps for any spell, no matter what the ritual is, no matter what the ingredients are, none of it. Like it's all the same. And then finally, the last part is being able to identify and honor where you are in this process. So let's get into the moon phases. Now, we could get really nitty gritty with magic stuff, but I consider myself what I refer to as a Cheeto dust witch, meaning like I will brush the Cheeto dust off my fingers and say, let's do this. And like I think it's more about the intention rather than the actions. When you have that dialed in, the rest kind of doesn't matter. But moon phases, that's one of these aspects of magic that kind of adds oomph to it. It really is going to help give your spell power because there are certain times of the month that are going to be better for certain kinds of spells just because of the natural energies of it. Now, the best way to think about this is basically holistically, like how does the moon act? What does it do? And I apologize, but I have to take a break for a second because my cat is trying to leave the room. Now you can hear her. Hold on one second. I'll be right back. Familiars, am I right? Okay. So, getting into the moon phases, the best way to kind of think about it, remember it, is to keep in mind how the moon behaves. So, obviously, the moon is constantly in a state of flux, it's either increasing or decreasing. So, as the moon is increasing, starting with the new moon, which is when it is completely dark in the sky, we can't see it, from there to the full moon, that is an increasing phase. So the best time for those spells, like the best spells for that time period, those are gonna be spells of increase, attraction, things like that. Now, on the other hand, when the moon is full, meaning like it is fully bright, it is a nice big pie in the sky, from there, returning to the new moon when it's dark, it is obviously decreasing, which means essentially that those phases between the full moon and the new moon are going to be great for spells of decrease. Now you're probably like, in what way would I want decreasing spells when it comes to money? Easy. Let me explain. You can decrease things like stress. You can decrease things like debt. You can decrease bad habits, right? These are things that support your journey. Those are the kind of spells that are good for removal, maybe even removing obstacles. Those are the best kind of spells for that phase. However, the full moon, I like to say it's kind of a freebie, right? You know, when you play bingo and there's a free space right in the middle, you don't have to wait for any kind of clue, you just get that point right away. Same kind of thing with the full moon. You can really do anything on the full moon. However, I like to always, even if you're going to do some kind of attraction or increase spell, I like to pair it with a decreasing before that. So you kind of want to honor that dual aspect of the full moon. So that's the easy way of thinking about it. Now, in my book, I list out the specific phases, and I'm going to hit those really quick because it's kind of a good rule of thumb. But remember, Cheeto dust witchcraft. That means like it doesn't have to be super precise, but it will be helpful, right? Like it's just extra energy. It contributes good energy to whatever your spell is. So obviously we talked about the new moon. That's when it's dark in the sky. This is the best time for planting seeds. So starting something new, really getting it like really starting a cycle off. Brand new things, planting seeds. And the best way I have found to compare the moon phases is thinking of gardening. I should have said that at the beginning, but it's thinking of, like, gardening, planting, harvest cycles, and I wanna throw out there, I'm not a plant person. I'd like to be. I love plants, but I'm pretty bad at anything other than Christmas cacti, but I find that it is the most appropriate metaphor for thinking of them. So, new moon, this is when we're planting seeds, okay? We're, like, tilling the earth, we're prepping, and we're putting those new seeds in. The next thing that's gonna come up is a waxing crescent moon. A waxing crescent moon, that's where it kind of looks like a silver sliver or a toenail, if you will, right? Like, this is the time for nurturing the seeds. So, it's not necessarily a time for new things. I mean, you could do that, but it's better to kind of sprinkle a little bit of love on the seeds that you've already planted. So, this is, like, where that seed is germinating, it's starting to sprout. You're seeing the very first little green buds poke out from the soil. Next, we're gonna go into the first quarter moon. That's exactly what it sounds like. It is when the moon is 1 quarter, 25%, 1/4 full. And that's when, like, best way to think of it, a half wheel of cheese, right? Like, that's what it looks like. It's half of a wheel of cheese. I'm a big cheese fan, so that's my go-to. And this is a great time for calling in opportunities because we're halfway through that process. So you want to focus things on the external. So you've done the nurturing. Now it's time to like go find the fertilizer, right? This is time to water the seeds, add fertilizer, do something external to nurture those seeds that you've already planted and nurtured a bit, that have already sprouted. Next, we're gonna get to the waxing gibbous. It looks like a silver sliver again or a toenail, but it's basically actually, my bad. It does not look like a silver sliver or toenail. This is where it's, like, almost full. It's 3/4 of the way full. Like, you know what it looks like. You're like, "Oh, it's is that full? I no, no, that's not full." That's basically how you can tell it's a waxing gibbous moon, and waxing, that term just means it's on the increase, right? Waning obviously means decrease, which we'll get to after the full moon. So with the waxing gibbous moon, this is emitting really good energy for any kind of desires that are feeling like they've stagnated. So, right before we get to the full moon, we're looking at this as a place to bring new energy to something that feels like it's stymied a bit. So, for those of us who have black thumbs, we are not plant people, even if we do love them. You want to think about this is kind of like when you put a house plant outside and you forgot about it for a little bit, and now you panic, so you go to check on it, and, oh, it's doing fine, but we need to add a little bit of water to it. We need to put a reminder in our phone to water it again, right? This is what we're doing. We're like, "Oh, okay, let's make sure that this doesn't go south. Let's add a little bit let's, like, add some reminders. Let's add some newness to something that's already existing." This, of course, brings us to the full moon. Now, I told you the full moon is basically a blank slate. This is where, like, your plant is thriving, and you can really go in any direction you want. You wanna, like, snip a piece off and, start making little I forget what those are called, prop I think it's props. I know this the short term is props, but do you wanna start propagating. Do you wanna start making, like, propagating it and giving some pieces to friends? Do you wanna plant it in the yard, see if it's gonna grow? Do you wanna put it in a new pot, right? This is where you're kind of thinking about, like, where can this go? You can also, again, use this as a blank slate. You can do anything. You can start anywhere with this. It can be something existing. Would I recommend starting something new here? I mean, like, you can. Again, I'm not gonna say you can't. You absolutely can. However, I want you to pair it with something that's going to involve decrease as well. Because remember, it's kind of this dual phase. It's both like the culmination the waxing phases before it kicks off the waning phases. So go ahead if you want to start something new there, that's fine. But focus first on what you're decreasing in order to set your intentions of increasing other things. Right? So keep that in mind. So now that the moon is full, it's going to start decreasing. These are the waning phases. So the first one's going to be that waning gibbous. This is again, it looks like it's almost full, but it's not quite. Like, wait, what's going did we just have a full moon? I think we did. Oh, but it still looks kind of full. Oh, no, 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 it's not full. Yeah, same kind of thing. So waning gibbous, this is where the moon is like just starting to shrink, okay? And you wanna look at this as a time for reducing small obstacles because it is still just like a little bit decreased. We're gonna focus on little obstacles. So, this is where you're cutting back on the small stuff, you're dialing in your habits, you're focusing on things like that. Maybe dedicating an hour a day for whatever it is that you want to do, or taking an hour of TV away every night so you can focus on those things. That's how we're approaching it, which brings us to the 3rd quarter. Once again, half wheel of cheese, but now it's on the other side, so it's like the complement to that 1st quarter moon. This is called a 3rd quarter moon. So with this 3rd quarter moon, we're obviously halfway to the new moon, to the moon going totally dark. And this is where we're gonna do troubleshooting rituals because we're halfway there. If things haven't really changed, we haven't seen any progress, or there have been some unforeseen obstacles that have come up, this is a really good time to focus your magic on reducing those. So if we're using the plant metaphor again, we're gonna think about this as like, oh, all of a sudden your plant has something wrong with it. Maybe a dead leaf, maybe a black spot, something, maybe it's drooping and you're like, "Uh-oh, what's this about? I guess I need to ask my plant friend or I need to figure it out. I need to Google some stuff, call a plant store," whatever it is. You're basically spot treating. You're figuring out what is happening here. Something has gone wrong, and now I need to that, of course, brings us to the waning crescent, and this is, once again, where the moon looks like a silver sliver or a toenail, okay? But again, it's on the other side now, 'cause it's waning, it's reduced. Now, This is where we're gonna go balls to the wall on banishing anything that is going to be getting in our way. So this is like the hard stuff, okay? Let's say, like, if you've got a plant, oh, it's got a mystery disease, it's got bugs, aphids are all over it, like, oh my god, SOS, 911. I don't know what they use in other countries, I just know that, but we're basically sounding the alarm, okay? So this is where if we're gonna do rituals during this time, it's best to basically, like, go ham, go hard on getting rid of big problems, big stuff that's affecting whatever your intentions were in the. This is a phase that hat tip to one of my BFFs, Kaylee, who likes to talk about a dark moon phase. This is technically a few days before the lunar cycle restarts at the new, and this is where the sky looks dark and the moon looks like it's gone, but it's not quite yet full moon, right? This is like new moon eve, if you wanna think about it. And this is a really good time for reflection. This is a time to really look yourself in the mirror and get real with yourself. What am I doing that's getting in my own way? What are the beliefs or the obstacles that I'm creating for myself that are making this difficult? How do I seek alignment? And maybe I need to reassess. Maybe the call is coming from inside the house, right? Like maybe I'm the drama. Right? That's where we do reflection and we ask for guidance from our highest self, from our higher power, from spirit, from the universe, God, whatever you want to say. This is where we kind of surrender. We look at ourselves, we see the problems that we're creating, we ask for guidance, and we're being quiet. It's a quiet time. Now, there's one other moon, phase that I wanna discuss. It's not a moon phase, but it is related to spell casting because sometimes at these various phases, we'll have an eclipse. It may not be visible, but it's happening, right? It's visible in some areas of the world, but we are experiencing an eclipse is happening, and it happens a few times a year. A lot of people will say that you cannot or should not do magic during the eclipse, during any kind of eclipse. I'm not one of them because I think it's all about the energy you bring to it. Now, astrologically speaking, eclipses are all about chaos and change. I heard the astrologer Susan Miller once describe it as like in an action movie when the hero's like crossing a rope bridge across like a raging river in a valley that's really deep below, and just as they get across, the bridge just crumbles and falls into the river right behind, right? Like that is the energy of eclipse, meaning like it's taking you where you need to go, but it's taking you somewhere, and it's the kind of change where you cannot go back to where you were. It is good change. It may be chaotic. It may be difficult to encounter or to navigate, but everything you want is on the other side. You can never go back to the place where you were. So keeping that energy in mind, that's the kind of spell that you're gonna wanna focus on if you're going to do a spell during the eclipse. You want chaos. You want chaos as the as the end goal here. So this is gonna be a good time for something like a change of course spell. It's something where it's gonna shake things up. It's like the Moldavite of the moon phases. You have to be so open to losing everything to basically cast this, where you're like, "Everything in this phase that I'm in right now, I don't care. Take it away because the intentions that I've set, I wanna get where I wanna go or where I'm supposed to be so badly that you can really, universe, God, take away anything that's not meant." That's really and truly what it's about. So I'm not saying you can't cast spells during during eclipses. I'm not saying you can't even make moon water during eclipses because moon water is its own thing. It's where you leave water out during a moon phase, it infuses. People usually do it at the full moon, right? And most people are like, "Oh my god, I would never do something during the eclipse." But you just need to, like, keep that shit labeled. You don't wanna accidentally, like, take a sip of that thinking like, "Oh, yeah, I'm, like, getting infused with the properties of the full moon." No, this is for chaos. This is for shaking things up. And if you're gonna, like, charge crystals and stuff, the crystals that are, like, chaos based, so moldavite, malachite, things like that, that's a good time to charge them, right? Because they are stones that are meant to bring some kind of chaos, good chaos. It gets us to where we wanna go, but that's the energy. So you can use those stones with that energy to strengthen them. So those are the moon phases. Let's briefly cover the zodiac. So the signs that we want to go over, we're gonna, and for the record, I'm using um, Western astrology, Aries through Pisces. And I'm using this because it's what I'm familiar with. It's what I know the best. I'm sure there are other ways. I know there are different cultures, different zodiacs. But we're going to use this one because I find it strikes a good balance for spell casting because it is essentially seasonal. It's like a month and a half, 2 months at a time. So the energy. Now, before we get into that, one more thing on the moon, which is the full moon is not going to be in the sign of where we are, like, whatever the date is. So, like, right now, it's August 16th, so we are in Leo season. The full moon that we just had during the Leo sun phase, that's not Leo based, that's from 6 months before, because this is about the completion of a moon cycle of these phases. So the new moon, because it is new and it is happening in that season, that's going to be something from 6 months ago. Or sorry, I'm so sorry. Let me restate this because I think I just got everybody confused. New moons are based on the sign that we are currently in. So it is August 16th. We are in the sun season of Leo. So a new moon that happens now is going to be in Leo. That is opposed to a full moon, which represents a completion from the new moon 6 months before. So, we have a full moon coming up, and that is going to be in Aquarius, 'cause Aquarius was 6 months ago. So, that's how we look at it, and that's important to know because these moon phases, their energy is determined by the seasons that they're in. So it's a good thing to keep in mind, especially with, like, the new moon and the full moon. So if we're thinking about the signs of the zodiac, we kinda wanna go with, like, the general things that they're known for, the general things that the signs rule, any kinds of maybe gods or goddesses who might be associated with them, right? Like, we wanna keep these things in mind. So, for example, we're gonna go through them. I'll give you quick hits on all of them. And I'm saying these things, please separate, like, your own personal astrology, your signs, your birth stuff, aside from this. That's not what we're talking about because, personalities, people, that's way more involved than what I'm talking about, which is these umbrella representations, okay? And this is of the season. So with Aries, that is the energy of, like, action. It's a little bit selfish, just meaning, like, putting yourself first. It's like, shoot first, ask questions later. That's what Aries is all about. So a new moon in Aries, that's gonna be great for taking action. That's gonna be great for taking action, and a full moon in Aries is going to be great for looking at how you're not taking action, for example. Now, the other signs, I'm gonna hit them quick and kinda go through what they're associated with, what they may rule, and that way you have a good idea of how the energy from those moon phases can combine with the signs to tell you what kind of spells would be good for what time of the year. So, Taurus is all about comfort, luxury, groundedness, relationships like snuggle time, money, beauty, but this isn't like showy luxury. It's like quiet luxury. It's like really nice soft blankets, candles that smell nice, good lighting. It's that kind of quiet luxury. It's like kind of like old money. It's not showy. Okay? It's not showy, it's comfortable. Gemini is all about creativity, a little bit of chaos, but like more like mischievousness. Is that a word? Yes. And about inspiration. It's also gonna be about fresh perspectives and anything regarding communication. So, it's big on the arts. So, writing, music, anything that kind of even remotely touches communication is gonna be big with Gemini. Cancer is known as the mother of the zodiac because it's all about nurturing. It is emotional, it's related to the moon, so anything with the moon is gonna be, like, increased there, but it's about deep emotion, it's about fertility, reflection, nurturing, families, things like that, even healing, all of that stuff. That's Cancer. Leo, I like to say, think of, like, you know, Kendall or Kylie Jenner, right? Like, it's kind of like, it's a little bit like, "Oh, look at me, I'm beautiful," right? It's about appearance and beauty. But Leos are also all about courage, loyalty, big on being like, having a social life, breaking out of your shell, abundance, makeovers, positivity, self-image. Really, it's just radiant. It's a radiant sign. I love Leo season because I love being seen, so it's a perfect time for that. Virgo, this is about organization, alright? This is healing, but it's the healing that's going to bring discipline. So, in that vein, it's also about everyday habits and details, like getting the detailed planning and your health. Okay, this is like where we get back to the basics. We're like, okay, I need to make sure I'm dialed in and I'm disciplined. Libra, that's real. I mean, that's big on relationships. Libra is like all about, like, it's related to the lovers tarot card. It is, Libras are lover girls, lover boys, lover envies, like, that's what we're talking about, but they're all about romance, they're about being charming, flirtatious, balanced, and they play devil's advocate all the time. Even if they don't want to, they can't help themselves. It's about seeing things from multiple perspectives. It's a natural state of being. Scorpio is kind of similar to that eclipse energy, which there are normally eclipses during Scorpio season. And Scorpio is all about transformation. It's about death and rebirth, emotional exploration, like really getting deep and bringing up things that you may have buried, things in your subconscious. So, shadow work is really great during this time, psychic powers, even divination, and definitely, like, sexual energy. So it's kind of like the underbelly of things, like, you wanna really, like, it's a deep sign. And so anything related to Scorpio, you want to be, like, deep deep and meaningful and maybe a little gritty, right? It can also, because it's related to sexual energy, it can be fertility as well. Sagittarius, they're all about, I like to call them traveling scholars because that's really their jam. They love learning, they love traveling. Really, it's not just travel, it's newness, right? They like to experience things. So it's about finding truth, truth-based. It can be protection, legal issues, because those things are associated with knowledge, right? With knowledge and scholarship, things like that, and, like, movement, really. So, that's how we think of Sagittarius. Capricorn Capricorn's called the father of the zodiac, and what you would kind of associate with daddy energy is really that. That's what Capricorn's all about. So, Capricorn is also ruled by Saturn, which is called the taskmaster planet. And that's because it is all about discipline. It's also about ambition, having career goals, money goals, stability in finance, financial planning, business, things like that. Capricorn's all about it. It's all about ambition and it's about the discipline and the organization to get there. When it comes to Aquarius, I think they get a bad rap because they're basically like, oh, um, kind of unfeeling sometimes, like, they can come off like people associate them with being, like, a little bit cold, emotionally emotionally unavailable, but it's because they're about things that are far reaching. So they are really inclined toward humanity in general, and even if not just humanity, also their broader community, the places where they live, their cities, like their wide group of friends. They're less about the individual and they're more about like the collective whole. That's what Aquarius is all about. Because of that, they're also tend to be very political. They have strong political beliefs. They care about like morality and the good, like the doing the best for the greater good. That's what they're all about. So that they're about that. They're also really into newness and technology. So think about like developments, humankind's developments. That's like what Aquarius is about. And then finally, we get to the last sign, it's Pisces, and Pisces is creativity and dreams, mediumship, psychic abilities, artistic pursuits, philosophy, religion, things like that. It's all spiritual. It's all about like it's about all of that, and it's all about like, the human experience as well. There's something I read somewhere ages ago, I don't remember where, but there's this idea that, like, everyone who's a Pisces has lived through has lived lifetimes as each of the signs that came before it. So that's why they seem to almost have this, like, bottomless pit of empathy and understanding. Why they can blend into situations so well is because they fully understand the entire range of, like, human experience. So that's what I like to think of with Pisces. They're kind of like a little bit of everything. A little bit of everything, but it's because it's all about, like, it's all about spirituality, really. So you wanna keep those signs in mind, especially when it comes to the full moon and the new moon, because that is going to help dictate the best kind of spells, best kind of rituals you can be doing during these times. That's what it's all about. So, spell casting, before we even cast a spell, we have to be looking at the calendar. What's the moon phase? What's the sign that we're in? How is that going to affect it? And then we can craft rituals from there, or we can find them in books or on the internet or whatever it is. And that tells us, okay, these are going to be the best things for me to use during this time. Okay. Now, 2 more things I wanna mention before like, about spell casting and the foundations of this, and the first thing is that every spell follows the same basic principles, and if you've been following me for a long time, you probably have heard me say this before. This is, like, my proprietary three-step method for goal setting, job hunting, business coaching, everything I teach through the frame of these 3 points, because not only building blocks of magic, they're the building blocks of any kind of success. And when you have an understanding of what they are, it becomes so much easier for you to see success in your spell work, in your magic, but also in your broader life. So when we strip back the pomp and circumstance, because a lot of people will go look up a spell and they'll see like they need a bunch of materials that they have to like order online and not even from Amazon. They have to go to like some online witch store and like that's like based in New Orleans and like order stuff from them. They don't know like what it is or where it's coming from. They see stuff like that, or they see like having to do strange things like, "Oh, I have to, like, discard of the spell remnants at a crossroads," or, "I have to put it into a river." I've seen that before, and they're like, "Oh god," like, I can't do magic. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. I don't have money for this. I don't have patience for this. But the reality is that none of the ritual really the ritual is representative of this process because the 3 steps to make a spell work, to achieve any goal, those are to 1, align your intentions, 2, embody those intentions deeply, and 3, take inspired action daily. That's it, because when you go to cast a spell, you really have to believe that it's going to happen. You have to fully believe it and understand it, like, you have to know it like you are employed and you get a weekly paycheck every 2 weeks from a reputable employer who never bounces your checks, right? Like, it is guaranteed, okay? That is the level of belief you need to have in that spell, and if your intentions are a little off or you've got some subconscious beliefs that are affecting you, that can affect the effectiveness of the spell. The example I've used before is my sister once signed up with a matchmaker where they had guaranteed that she would have 6 dates, 1 a month for 6 months. They were gonna find the prospects for her based on what she was looking for, and she just had to show up. Well, she was so afraid that the first date was going to be bad. She's like, "I'm gonna cast a spell," and I'm like, "You probably shouldn't cast a spell. It's like, this is like, if you're afraid, like, don't cast the spell." But of course, she's like, "Nah, I wanna do it. I wanna cast the spell." So, okay, she does it. And that first date that she had ended up being horrible. It was all the things she was worried would happen. And it's because that was muddying her intention. That was there. She was casting from fear. And so the universe having a sense of humor will have that fear manifest so you can see, "Hey, you don't need to be afraid of this." And of course, what happened, the matchmaker was like, "I am so sorry. We're gonna not count that toward one of your dates. You can get another date this month." Like, massive apologies. It worked out fine. But that's what I mean. You have to make sure that your intentions are really on board with the thing that you're asking for. When it comes to embodying those intentions deeply, that's where we act as if the spell has already happened. And I'm not saying like, "Oh, I'm casting a spell for money attraction. Now I'm gonna go out and buy a bunch of stuff because the money is on its way." That's not what we're talking about. This is where it's like, "Okay, if I cast a spell for finding a job or making more money, I have to ask myself, how would I act? How would I behave if I were somebody making that amount of money, who had those clients, who had that job, whatever?" And a lot of times we can see that maybe our daily schedule doesn't reflect it. So it can be something like, oh, if I had that many clients, I'd wake up early, I'd have a slow morning, I'd do like some journaling and some meditation, get my day started, and then, I would like I would have this for lunch, or I'd go here for lunch or whatever. Or it could be that you would manage your money in a certain way, right? I hear a lot of people being like, "Well, I can't budget because I don't have enough money to budget. I'm afraid to budget because I don't have anything." So that's an example. So you have to look at these things and then say, "You know what? I'm gonna do it now. I'm gonna embody these intentions. I'm gonna live as this person," because that makes it easier to believe the intentions that you set. It decreases those limiting beliefs because your brain starts creating new neural pathways when it looks around and says, "Wait a second, I thought I was gonna live this way after I got the goal, but I'm living this way now, which means I must have got the goal. I don't remember getting the goal." So then it's gonna start problem solving, and that's when you start getting this inspiration from your intuition that guides you there. And that's where we get into taking inspired action daily. This is different than just taking action. Taking action is like the hamster wheel feeling. "Oh my god, I'm going, going, going," but I'm not really going anywhere. I don't feel like I'm getting any closer. Taking inspired action, that is where we bring your intuition into the process, and you may have strategies, or you may need to learn some strategies to get you closer there, like if you want a much better job, maybe a job in another field, another industry, or you wanna make a major a major promotive move, like you wanna move to another company at a much higher role, you might need to do some networking. You may need a networking strategy. If you wanna run your business at a higher level or you wanna work with a different type of client, you might need a different business strategy. But it can't just be the strategy alone. You need to be in touch with your intuition to help guide how you apply those strategies. So, for example, you could be networking and, like, you keep thinking of somebody. Maybe it's like an old classmate who you haven't talked to in a while, or an old coworker, and you're like, "Man, I can't get them out of my head. Maybe I need to network with them. Maybe I'm just gonna reach out and see what happens." You have to be able to discern what your intuition sounds like and how you can combine it with whatever strategies you're using. That's like when we cast the spell for money attraction, increase, whatever, and then we go forward and take actions to get there. It's a little bit different than embodiment because embodiment is more about the self. It's more about the reflection and it's more about the environment. Whereas the action is about the steps that we're taking to get there. It's the milestones between where we are and the intention and the goal that we set for later. That's what it's about. And then finally, the last thing to keep in mind when it comes to casting a spell is what phase of money manifestation that you're in, what phase of life you're in. And I don't mean like early career or middle aged or whatever it is. What I'm talking about rather are the phases that I identified of money manifestation. So this is specific to money, but you could apply it to love, other things when you hear the concept. I've identified like 3 buckets that people generally fit into. The first one is gonna be like the first time manifestors. You are new to the work, you're diving in for the first time, you haven't been trying to use any kind of spiritual or practical strategies before, you're brand new at this. And that's its own phase. You've got your first timers. What happens is that once you've been doing it for a little while, there are 2 paths that you'll generally go down. There's one where it's like, "Wow, now I'm making the money that I want and everything's wonderful. Whee!" That is rare, okay? Not a lot of people go there next, okay? Instead, a lot of people go into this phase that I call the money manifestation wave. This is where you're making a lot of money or you're having a lot of success, and then after a while, you start tanking. Some surprise expenses, bills come up, you spend a little bit too much, and you are back down at square one, and you're like, "Oh my god, I have no money. What's gonna happen?" And then after a while, you get it together and you start succeeding again, you make tons of money, you're back to where you were, you're feeling so excited, you stay there for a while, and then once again, unforeseen expenses, surprise bills, things that take you right back down. And we go up and down and up and down over the course of however long. And for a long time, a lot of the manifestation gurus and sources that I've followed, they talk about that. They don't reference this. They talk about it as if you're doing something wrong. But in the work that I was doing with myself and my clients, I started realizing almost every single person I met would go through this phase. And it occurred to me one day, I don't know when, it was basically divinely inspired. I just had this aha moment where I said, what if this is a necessary step rather than an indication that something is wrong? And when I allowed myself to ask the question, I was then able to go a little bit deeper into that. I said, okay, well, if that's the case, what would be the lesson here? Like, why would you be earning and losing, earning and losing? What's the point of that? And I realized that it was because it was about fear. It's about fear, insecurity, stability, and building that. Because everybody I knew who had gone into this wave of up and down and up and down, everybody had the same thing in common, and that was that they had money trauma. Everybody had lived through something that shook them to their core, either in childhood, early adulthood, but they were so afraid and they did not trust themselves, they didn't trust money, they didn't trust the universe, and I realized the whole point of this phase is to teach trust. is to get them to surrender and get to this point of, "It's all gonna work out. I don't need to panic. I don't need to stress." So that's that second phase, is the money manifestation wave. And the spells that you're gonna cast during that time are gonna be totally different than what you would be doing if you were a first timer or if you were in a great place, the other phase, which is a juicy plateau, if you're in that place, the spells that you wanna cast during that time need to be around the feeling of safety and security. Because if you try to cast spells for abundance, some part of you doesn't feel safe with it. And so you have to recognize where you are. So that way you pick or you cast spells that are effective because they're in line with the timing and with the intentions and the limiting beliefs and all of it. You can manifest in any phase, but you need to honor the phase that you're in. Now, the final phase, the third and final phase is the juicy plateau. This is where you've been doing this for a long time. You are doing great. You're like, "We have been making tons of money. Things are going great. I have no worries." And then all of a sudden, things just kind of plateau. And this can be financially, this can be where it's like, "Why can I not seem to crack above this salary or this monthly income?" or whatever it is. It can also be in non-financial ways, especially like if you're in business. It could be, "Why can't I seem to crack this title in my job? Why can't I seem to get a book deal? Why can't I seem to book speaking gigs? Why can't I seem to do X, Y, or Z?" It's basically that you cannot you're like hitting a glass ceiling. That's how it feels. You're like, "Oh my god, I'm doing the things that I know work, but I don't feel like I'm getting there yet." And this phase is really about reevaluating, looking at what's been working for you, what's not been working for you. Because what got you to this level of success is probably not what's going to get you to the next level. And so the spells that you're gonna be looking at during that time need to be focused on clarity, self-reflection, and they need to be on changing things up. That's where we're looking at maybe a change of course spell. This is where we're looking at maybe, like, shaking things up. This is where we need to look at, like, "Okay, how do I do things differently? How do I get more clarity? How do I get in touch with a deeper connection with my psychic gifts?" That's what we're talking about in that phase. And so those spells are going to be more effective than what you would do in that first phase of, "I'm just going about this the first time. I'm gonna experiment and just go in and try to manifest and cast spells for abundance," and things like that, and, getting rid of the limiting beliefs and all of that. This is a different flavor of it. So once you understand what phase you're in, you can then identify what it is that you're needing. You look at the calendar to figure out the moon phase, the zodiac energy of the moon phase, and that is going to tell you the exact kind of rituals and spells that you can cast during this time. I know it's a lot, but this is one of those things where when you do the preparation early, then doing the actual spell work or the spell casting goes much better for you because you have all of these energies supporting you and working for you rather than being these low key obstacles that you're trying to overcome. I hope this clarified things. If you've got any questions on casting spells or money magic or any of that, come join the Coven, the Witches Way to Wealth Coven community. You can sign up to join on my website. Just go to jessicasilva.com/community. The link will be here in the description, in the show notes, and I hope I see you there. As a reminder, all of the members of that community get to attend these recordings live and get their questions answered. So that's what's next. I'm going to answer those questions for community members, and I hope I see you there. Have a great day and happy manifesting.